Okay, good evening. Tonight we're going to start Chapter 4, Section 3. We are going to talk about our triangle sum theorem. So as we've talked about earlier, the sum of the angle measures of a triangle is 180 degrees. So the actual name for that is the triangle sum theorem. So when we add angle M plus angle N plus angle P, we should get 180 degrees. Using that theorem, we can find measures of angles. So let's take a look. The measure of angle X, Y, Z. Okay, so the measure of angle X, Y, Z. So we're looking for this angle measure right here. Well, we know that when we add these up, they have to equal 180. So 62 plus 40 plus our unknown here, we'll call it X, okay, equals 180. Okay. So now 62 plus 40 is 102, plus X equals 180, and then we're going to go on ahead and subtract that 102 from both sides. Okay. So now we're going to get X equals 78 degrees. Okay. So that equals 78. Okay. Then we're told to find the measure of angle W. Okay. So this one right over here. So I'm going to start by finding WXY. Here's my reasoning. So these two angles right here, we know are a linear pair. And what does a linear pair have to add up to? 180 degrees. So 62 plus this measure of angle WXY has to equal 180 degrees. Right? So 180 minus 62 is 130 degrees. So subtract 62 from both sides and you get the measure of your angle WXY equals 130 degrees. Is that right? Is that what I got? WXY. Oh, sorry, I lied. 118. I'm looking at another problem and I don't have my calculator on me, or my math head apparently. All right, so measure of angle WXY then is 118 degrees. So from there, we can find the measure of angle W, because we know that that 12 degrees plus that 118 degrees plus that measure of angle W has to equal 180 degrees. So 12 plus 118, that's where my 130 is, plus measure of angle W equals 180. Subtract 130 from both sides, and you get your measure of angle W equals 50 degrees. Okay. So using our triangle sum theorem, we can answer lots of questions, okay, about the angles inside of a triangle. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. So based on the triangle sum theorem, we can create two more theorems. So one of them is angles of a right triangle theorem. This says that the acute angles of a right triangle are complementary. Well, we've already looked at the fact that if we take 90 degrees out of here, we are left with 90 degrees. So in other words, the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle C have to equal 90 degrees. And we know that that right there is the definition of complementary. Okay? Our other theorem is the equiangular triangle theorem, which we've also looked at already, that says that the measure of each angle of an equiangular triangle is 60 degrees. So if these three have the same measure, okay, and it's 180 degrees total, then 60 plus 60 plus 60 equals 180 degrees. Okay. Right. Let's talk about the interior and the exterior of a triangle. So an interior angle of a triangle is an angle on the inside of the triangle. An exterior angle of a triangle is an angle formed by extending one side of the triangle and the adjacent side of the triangle. In other words, it's on the outside of the triangle. Okay, so this angle 4 is an exterior angle, okay, because we've extended this side, okay, and it's part of the side, and it comes from the side of the triangle. Okay, for each exterior angle, one interior angle forms a linear pair with the exterior angle. So angles 3 and 4 form a linear pair. The other two angles are remote interior angles. So think about remote. Remote means far away. Okay? So 1 and 2 are far away from these other two angles, from the linear pair. Okay, so our exterior angle theorem tells us that the measure of an exterior angle is equal to the sum of the remote interior angles. In other words, the measure of angle 4 equals the sum of the remote interior angles. So using that information, we can solve some problems. We know that our exterior angle, which in this case, here's our linear pair right there, okay, is 126, has to equal our two remote interior angles, so our angles far away, added together. So 6x minus 1 plus 5x plus 17. So now we're going to combine our like terms, and we get 11x plus 16. Okay. And then we are going to subtract 16 from both sides, and we get 110 equals 11x. Divide both sides by 11, okay, and we get 10 equals x. We can check this by plugging our 10 in. So we're going to get, if we plug our 10 in here, 60 minus 1 is 59, and 5 times 10 is 50, plus 17 is 67. If we add those together, we had better get 126, which we do. Okay. And then our last concept for this section is the third angle theorem. If two angles of one triangle are congruent to two angles of another triangle, then the third pair of angles are congruent. So if we look at this, let's just say this is 20 degrees and this is 20 degrees. Let's say this is 60 degrees, which means this is 60 degrees. Well, there's 80 degrees total. Okay, and we know that a triangle adds up to 180. So we know this has to be 100, and if we do the same thing with this triangle, we know it's 100. Okay, so those third angles have to be the same if we're adding them up. Okay, so now let's take a look at a problem where we can use that. Well, here it tells us that angle M is congruent to angle S. Sorry, N is congruent to S. Angle M is congruent to angle R. So based on our third angle theorem, we know that angle P is congruent to angle 2. So our 2x squared has to equal or be congruent to our 4x squared minus 32. Okay, I'm going to subtract 4x squared from both sides. Okay, I get negative 2x squared equals negative 32, and I'm working backwards to solve this thing. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2, which gives me x squared equals 16. Okay, now I have to take the square root of both sides to get my x by itself. And x equals 4, and it's plus or minus 4, but when we're taking the square root, we want the positive root, which is 4. And remember that an angle can't be negative, so we need to take the positive. Okay, so now let's plug it back in. So 4 times 4 squared, which is 16, we have to do the exponent first, minus 32 gives us 32 degrees. Now if we plug it in here, we better get 32 degrees. So 2 times 4 squared is 16 gives us 32 degrees. So we are correct. 32 degrees is our total. Have a good night, and I will see you guys tomorrow.